Welcome to Viva La Visionary, the podcast that celebrates the innovative ideas and mindsets of entrepreneurs and visionaries. Join your host, Coach Bob Schittefeld, as he dives into inspiring stories and practical insights from trailblazers who are changing the game. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or a seasoned leader, this show is your source for motivation and creativity. Let's embark on this exciting journey together.
Hey there, Coach Bob here with another episode of Viva La Visionary. Very excited to have my good friend and my attorney, I shouldn't say that maybe, but John Mashni. John, how are you today?
I'm great. It's really cool. Really cool to hang out with you, Bob.
Well, it's always a pleasure for me as well. So I like to start with a softball question. John, why are you on this planet?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, you start you
Right.
just start to ease into them.
Yeah, and then we'll go deep in a while.
Honestly, I think I've had two purposes, and I think I've shared them right. Share the truth through stories,
Yep.
build influence that ultimately helps people. And those are the two filters that I personally use, whether it's law practice, whether it's my family, whether
Right.
it's anything personal, anything professional. It's those two things.
I love that. And so I know that you're an attorney and you do other things. So briefly explain, so what's unique about what you do as an attorney? And then we'll talk about your other hobby / gift to the world.
Yeah. So what's unique about me as an attorney is I usually I really put the most value on the advisor piece.
Right.
So I'm generally working with entrepreneurs, business owners, and creative people. So
Right.
I went to film school, so I have experience. I've had multiple businesses that I've been a part of, whether it's, started a business in my 20s. I did actually commercial video production and audio production and marketing, and I worked kind of and managed a media department, so I have experience doing that. And as an attorney, really, it's about serving clients, and I try to be authentic. I try to be truthful and really do what's best for the client, even if it's sometimes not what's best for me, or
Right.
sometimes just send them elsewhere, right? Because someone else can serve them better. So
Right.
I think it's like you do need someone like that in your corner, not
Right.
someone that's just going to tell you what you want to hear or tell you what's good for them. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I value in terms of what I do as an attorney.
Right. So before we go to the other thing, you presented to the Visionary Forum a couple of years ago, and it was so different, especially coming from a lawyer. But can you explain? So it was about intellectual property and
Yeah.
entertainment. So can you explain it? What you
Well,
told us?
so yeah, I love this topic because it allows me to use my film school experience and my storytelling experience, but also teach people how to integrate really what I view as one of the biggest trends right now. And it's this idea that the cost to produce content is just
Right.
going down.
Right.
Technology has just made it so inexpensive. There's so many options out there, and it has really removed a lot of gatekeepers. There's just not the gatekeepers that there was 20, 30, 40 years ago in terms of being out there, in terms of getting content out and share and having the ability to tell your story and get distribution out there. And what my belief, or you could say my thesis, which I
Right.
think it's true now. It's just happening
It's a
everywhere.
book, dude. Let's have AI help you write this book. Anyways, go ahead.
But and every business is a media and entertainment company, whether you think you are or not. And what I do, and this is part of what I did, was study the companies that I thought were super interesting in terms of how did they protect their content, their
Right.
intellectual property, and I specifically looked at Disney. I looked at some of the biggest media companies in the world. And then I actually looked at the businesses that all they did was sell information. They didn't sell a product, they
Right.
didn't sell a service necessarily. All they did was sell information. That's it.
Right.
And it was very fascinating. And the two that I think I studied initially were EOS and Strategic Coach,
Right.
because I thought that they did the best jobs at protecting their intellectual property. And so
Right.
what it allowed me to kind of figure out was I took my experience. I do entertainment law as part of what I do, and so I'd actually worked for some of the biggest entertainment media companies in the world, talked to their lawyers, spent time with them, saw how they protected their intellectual property. And I've been worked on with like independent filmmakers and producers, musicians, artists, authors, all these kinds of people. And then I worked with businesses, entrepreneurs. And so what I kind of figured out was that the future is really about taking the content that's in your business and starting to tell stories and then treating it and protecting it like a Disney would,
Right.
like a Warner Brothers, like the biggest media companies in the world. And now those media companies are even changing. It's not who we think it is,
Right.
right? More people play Fortnite than our Netflix subscribers,
Wow.
right? So it's a really different world. And the other thing is, the most famous plumber in the world has more YouTube subscribers than almost anybody, right? I mean, it's one of the most crazy things is you go on YouTube and you see a famous plumber,
Right.
right? Just telling people how to fix their toilets. It's just we're in a different world. And so what I think is fascinating, and that comes from my thesis, is what I can help people do and what I love to kind of help people plan out is, hey, how do we treat your intellectual property, whatever it is, whether it's a brand name, whether it's a podcast name, right? Whether it's your content, we can treat it just like Disney treats their content. And that's you can protect it. And I don't want to say it can become just as valuable, but here's the thing. The barriers that are out there that were out there 20 years ago don't exist anymore. And so
Right.
you can create something very, very valuable without a fraction of the size of some of the big media conglomerates and have a phenomenal business and really you can think just like them and have very similar benefits as an entrepreneur.
Well, I love that. That was a big eye opener for me. And I don't need to own the whole world as far as my clients, and I don't even need to own all of the visionaries, but it's what is my niche? And then to own some of those keywords and whatnot in that has been amazing. And so you taught me a lot from that. So that's awesome. And that I'm in the entertainment business. I mean, it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting because if I'm boring or what we're providing is boring, people aren't going to come back.
That's
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. And
So I love that.
you can do it too. I mean, someone like you, Bob, even in your business, you are in the media business. You are in the entertainment business. Whether you think you are or not, you can act just like those companies.
All right. Well, cool. I'll have to learn how to tap dance or something, but I do enough other dancing. So that's the legal side, which again, you're very unique as a lawyer as far as I'm concerned. And then what's your other, not just passion, but your other kind of business hobby?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think I went to film school in what year was it? The year 2000. So since then, I kind of came back from New York and I thought, hey, how do I still tell stories, but not in the way that maybe everybody would think? Go to Hollywood or go to New York and just find a way to be in the industry. I just really was not going to do that. I wanted to have a family and I wanted to do other things. And for years I thought, how do I do it? And so I wrote articles and I thought I was going to write a book. And 6 years ago now, somehow some of the stories I told my kids leaked out to a really close friend of mine, and my friends told, or my kids told him some of the stories I told them as bedtime stories, and he just said, John, you have to get these stories out there in the world. And I was initially very embarrassed, and I thought, I'm a lawyer and my firm's going to fire me. But what happened was, uh, I was looking for a way to, yes, tell stories, but also a way to spend more time with my kids. I
Right.
have 4 kids, and I think like as someone that's very busy, very busy professionally and personally, like it gets harder and harder to spend time with your kids and do it in a way that you feel good about. Sometimes you try to like squeeze it in, and it's just hard. And so, I talked to my wife about it and we said, well, what if we maybe tried to tell some of the stories that I made up to make my kids go to sleep and
Right.
trying to make them laugh? What if we as a family tried to turn some of these stories into books and sell them? And that's how, my whole children's book business started.
Right.
Just as a way to spend time with my kids. And we wrote one, I think I know you know about it, but it's, the story of Cinderella, except when the clock strikes midnight, she doesn't lose her slipper, she picks it up, but she toots. And then the prince, all he has is not her slipper, but the smell of her toot to find his true love, and he has to go around the kingdom asking all the maidens to pass gas to find his true love. But Cinder Toot came from me just having fun with my kids, and
Yeah.
and then we went through this process. We created the book. It was beautiful. My kids, they paid attention to every word. We hired a great editor. We hired an amazing illustrator, Kate. And my kids were involved in every step of the process, and they loved it. When I changed a word, they were like, "Dad, you changed this word, this one single word." I mean, it's incredible. And I think I've told you this before, but the first copy of Cindertooth that we got, my daughter's name is Ella, and in the book, in the story, is Cinderella. We called her Ella because of her name, Cinderella. But like that's what I didn't realize this till I started thinking about the story, but that's what they called her to make fun of her, Cinderella. Her real name's Ella, right? So see, that's the thing, the things you learn, right? So my daughter Ella opened the box the first time we got a copy in the mail and saw her name in the dedication page, because it says, every book says, to Maxwell, Ella, Esme, and Gemma, my kids.
Right.
And her face when she saw her name in a book was just, I mean, she was like beaming. She was like, it was almost like it was just this beautiful moment of just like she thought she had arrived, like my dad put my name in a book. And like those are those cool moments that you get.
Right.
And then we said, and I was trying to not just do something fun with my kids, I was trying to teach my kids, like as an entrepreneur you sometimes struggle with, how do I teach my kids how to be entrepreneurial or have a business, or just teach your kids, period. Teach them anything, really. I hope they,
Just to accomplish something, right?
That's right. And so I just said, well, why don't I just ask the kids, like, kids, do you want to write another book? And then it was another super fun conversation, because I said, well, we should know before we publish the first book, like, are we going to do another one? That's, you can't just have one product in a business. And then they started brainstorming, and Dad, what about this story? And what about that story? And honestly, that's where I'd forgotten. I told them the story, which is now the fourth book, of Manpunzel, which is my favorite story. But I only told them one time. Cindertooth, I told them 100 times.
Right.
But so it's amazing, like the insight that kids have, where I told a story one time, probably 5 minutes, and then they were like, Dad, you got to turn that into a book. It's our favorite.
Right.
So it's just cool. It's amazing. And it does bring joy. And I'll just say this to kind of, maybe end the description. But one of the coolest things, as a discussion I had with my kids, where I said, kids, what do we sell? We had 4 books out. I said, what do we sell? And they said, we sell books. And I said, no, we don't sell books.
Right.
And like, what do you mean? And I said, well, we sell about 30 minutes of joy with a child, and sometimes the child's optional. And I said, never forget that. Never forget, we don't sell books. It's beautiful.
Yeah. No, I'm so inspired by that, and that we talk a lot about what matters most, and obviously family and time together, learning together, project together is so cool. I love it, and I've got a couple other points I'll make about that in a second. But so when did you first realize you were a visionary?
I was talking to you. I think I was talking to you, Bob. I think you called
me. Get more members.
You're like, I really hope he is. I just told him he is a visionary. No, honestly, I think you were a huge part of it, and I'm honestly very, very grateful for that, because I was working at a big firm, and you were, I think, looking for an attorney, but I think you said, like,
I was looking for a visionary attorney.
You were looking for a visionary attorney. I
reached out to a ton of people, and people were like, there's no such thing.
Yeah. And it was beautiful, because I just remember a conversation. I just remember we talked about every topic but legal, anything legal related. And it was a wonderful conversation. I remember I was sitting in my office, and I just was like, well, this is a fun convo. I don't know where this is going, but I'm just enjoying the conversation. But I think at the end you said you should come to the Visionary Forum. And I said, well, Bob, I'm an attorney though. I'm not in the visionary seat. Right. I think that's how I phrased it in my mind. It was like, I'm not in a visionary seat. And you just would not take, any excuse. You were just like, oh, you're a visionary. Yeah, trust me. You just said, come to one. And that was it. And then I think I'm very grateful that you invited me, and that I know, regardless of whatever you were trying to do, I think that for me, it was just extremely influential, where I stopped thinking of myself as like, I am my job, or I am a certain role. It's like, no, I do have a vision of how I want to do things, and it excites me, and that vision gets other people excited, and just being who I am was really hard at the time, because I was struggling with that. Like, I felt like I was in a cage almost, and like you were just like, John, no, just trust me, just It's not even locked. The door's not even locked. You might be in a cage, but it's not even locked, or just
I was
that's what
making
I
some
heard.
shit up, right?
Yeah. So that's when that truly was a moment where I started to process, and then honestly going to Visionary Forum, Visionary Summits have been amazing, and then being around other people who are not afraid to say, "Hey, I'm a visionary,"
Right.
has been amazing for me.
No, I love that. And again, that's where our community, sometimes we don't understand and appreciate our uniqueness and our differences and our great gift. And so for us to be mirrors for each other is so amazing. It's so fun to be a part of that. And thank you for trusting me. And again, I did reach out, and it was Laurel, an EOS implementer, said, I think I know someone. I went to law school with them, and it was just great. And so yeah, so I'm so honored because when I deal with lawyers, it is so hard. And I'm just like, can you boil it down and can we simplify it and can we have fun? And so if I could have a lawyer who wrote Cindertoot and whatnot, then that really works. But no, and I've just loved our relationship and friendship. And this is what this is all about, is we're helping each other to live the life of our dreams. And a lot of us visionaries, we don't know who we are and don't know that we matter being unique. Because so you were an attorney, I'm a businessman, but no, I'm a visionary. And so we're not better than anyone else. We're just different.
Yeah. I think too. Yeah. Well, I think too, the hardest part was having the courage to just admit that. That
Right.
is a really big, there you have to take a risk, and you have to kind of step outside this comfort zone that you have of like, hey, I could have just kept doing what I was doing and I would have been okay. I think I probably would have suffered internally a little bit, but it would be very like slow kind of suffering where maybe I wouldn't notice it for 20 years or 30 years. And it'd be like, I would have looked back and said, oh, I guess I had a good life, but it wasn't exactly what I envisioned.
So instead of having slow suffering, you listened to me and you had instant suffering.
Sometimes it's painful, but I think it's truly been wonderful.
So what? How would you define like what is your role or our role as a visionary?
Wow. I think that one is to have the vision, right, of hey, there's a different way to do something. I think there's also a courage component that you have to be okay. I know you've been talking about this recently with this unknown. Like, hey,
Right.
if I step out, I don't know what's going to happen. And one quote that I have been really thinking about a lot was one of my favorite quotes from Joseph Campbell. And I think I've even heard you either mention it or someone mentioned it recently, but he was basically recounting a story like a Native American on the night before his vision quest, like, in life you will come across a great chasm, jump, it's not as wide as you think. And that I think that's the role of a visionary. It's like you jump. And then once you jump and you're on the other side, you start telling people, "Oh, what? Come jump over. Come on over here. I made it. I made it. I might
Right.
have I might have like fell or, I had to get someone to help me up, but I think so part of it is I think have that courage, have that vision, but then what's beautiful I think about what you're doing is you're also telling other people like you should jump too. And that's cool. I think that's the role that other visionaries can play with trying to just look backward and say, "Hey, come on, you can do it."
Right. Well, and you mentioned the unknown. That was a big aha for me at one of our summits when Jill Young, who's amazing coaching magic, and one of my coaches, she taught us that, that maybe the unknown is something that we visionaries are great at in love. And when she first presented that, I'm like, well, no, I'm like, no, I actually do love it. I get anxious about it, but that was a huge aha for me. And then what we talked about recently, and this came from Ram Dass, one of my spiritual teachers who passed away a while ago, but what I heard him say was, we live on the edge of really the unknown, and true faith is knowing that if I take that step, that one of two things happens. And one is I step onto stable ground, or two is I learn how to fly. And when I heard that, I was just like, fuck. I mean, that's why, and I still don't love the unknown, but I'm learning to embrace it more and more. And again, that's the visionary. So many people are afraid to, like you said, they're in the cage and the door's open. Just, go out. But people are often more comfortable in the cage with what they know as opposed to venturing out. So it's a cool thing. So I appreciate that. What's one thing you've learned as a visionary that you've implemented in your life, or something that you let go of either personally or professional, say, hey, here's one lesson I learned as a visionary that you could share?
Wow. All right. Well, two quick thoughts, I guess. I know you said one thing, but two
That's
quick
fine.
thoughts.
You're a
One
visionary. We
is,
get to
yeah, I
ramble
know.
on.
We just change the rules, right? There are no rules. I talked about feeling like I was in a cage earlier, and I learned like the door's not locked to the cage. Like
Right.
you think it's locked. It's not. There's the doors. You just got to open it. It's wide open, and I think it's unless you have that desire to leave the cage, you get really comfortable because, like, there's lots of things people say to kind of try to keep you in the cage, whether it's we've got really good food in here, there's a nice bed, or a nice
Right.
office, or a nice title, or a nice two salary, right? Like, but the cage door isn't locked. And that's just really humbling, if you think about it. Because I always think like when there's a lion in the cage, you don't need to like take care of the lion. You just got to open the cage and just let it out.
Right.
Like that's, if you want the lion out, right? And then the other thing I would say is I really just going back to what you said about the unknown. It truly is to be comfortable in it and be okay with it. Like the last year for me, I've really, the last 6 months particularly, I think back to like the Old Testament of like children of Israel wandering in the desert and like they just had enough food for a day, but every day they had food. And
Huh.
so the lesson I took from that was, hey, I'm good today. I have my mind, I have resources, I have what I need for today. I have what I need to go and execute and do what I need to do today. And
Right.
if I let tomorrow ruin what I can do today,
Right.
then I'm not going to be able to function because you won't, because you'll get stressed out, you'll be overtaken. But like so in my head, I would always say I'm good in the desert. I'm a desert person. I can live in the desert, and I think that just saying that over and over really allowed me to be good, be okay with that unknown. It's like, well,
Right.
I'm good today. All right, let's go.
Right. And live for today. Yeah. And we talk about, so to imagine this great future, so I'm not worried about it. To improve on the past and to no regrets, and then to be impactful today. And I know a lot of the verbiage and the chatter I used to have is, but what if I run out of money? And it's like, yeah, if everything in the world goes wrong in the next 6 months, I might be a little desperate. Okay, really? And so, but that's the chatter to go, oh, hold on, and the ego saying, but if you do that, someone might laugh at you or you might fail. It's like, yeah, but I'm still alive, and I've got my fellow visionaries to cheer me on and pull me back up.
Well, even like just saying, what if I run out of money? I had that thought.
Yeah.
And and I talked to somebody who was going through a bankruptcy, and I thought, okay, I guess that's what happens. If you truly run out of money, you just go through bankruptcy, and then it doesn't mean your life is over. It doesn't mean,
Right.
it's just you just do it. Like if that's what you have to do. And it was almost like a good reminder of like, okay, like I'll be fine. I'll be
Yeah.
okay. It's more of, am I sacrificing the things I actually love
Right.
because I'm so afraid of what could happen? So not even something that did happen, but what could happen,
Right.
right? Am I not paying attention to my kids? Am I not spending time with my wife? Am I being a good son or a good brother, or right? Like
Right.
that's the kind of stuff that I started to get more scared of than not having money. I was
Right.
like, wait a second, I'm more scared about not having money, but why am I not scared about ruining my relationships?
Right. And that your kids are going to grow up and they aren't going to be around as much. So yeah, again, that's so amazing, the experiences you're creating with your kids. Very inspirational. So what's one thing that you're either an opportunity you're working on or an obstacle or an issue that as a visionary you're wrestling with or working
Yeah.
on?
So one of the biggest things is trying to stay nimble, trying to maintain the ability to move quickly, but also building systems and structure and a team at the same
Right.
time.
Right.
That's where I'm at squarely, right? I think a lot of people are reaching out to me. They want to do something with me, whether it's, some type of training, education, maybe they want to work with me, but I'm trying to balance that with, okay, I'm trying to maintain flexibility because I do want to move quickly, but also I think a big part of being in business and being an entrepreneur is getting the right people around you,
Yep.
having the right team. And so if to have a team, you have to invest in a team, and that's the balance, or that's the challenge at the moment.
Right. I can appreciate that. Too often I get caught up in what do I do next as opposed to the who do I partner with or hire or whatever it might be, because I'm not smart at a lot of those things. And so for me to figure out the what, that's not real. I'm sorry, the how, that's not my strength. So yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And again, it's our group to say, okay, so who do we know? Or, John's looking for this. To me, I know we talked about it before, but Ben Franklin's Juntu group, I think that's what I kind of liken our visionary forum to. And so here they're going through a revolution. They're escaping, the tyrannies of the church and the kingdoms and creating this new country and fighting with their lives. But basically, he got together, how I heard it, every Friday at a pub for a grog of ale in Philly to say, what can we do? I heard John's struggling, or I heard John's doing great. How can we help him? I hear Bob needs a person. How can we help him? And that to me this is the greatest time ever to be alive, and yeah, and it's community that is really the thing that helps get me through it.
Yeah. I will say too, like, one thing I really learned a lot from the forum, and particularly like the summits. Like the summit doesn't start, I feel like, until I start wrestling with something internally, right? And at the last summit, I'll just share this. It was so awesome. I felt very quiet, like I was just listening, and then I think a couple hours in, I felt like I think Jenna was talking about leadership, and then she said something about procrastination, and then I was still stuck on that. So she had passed it, and then I just remember speaking up, saying, I'm just going to speak up and say I'm struggling. And I think I literally started with I'm struggling because I wasn't even sure how to articulate what I was struggling with. It was like I'm struggling, and it was just this beautiful moment. And I think this is a testament to what you've created here, Bob. Is I think it was Jill Young actually said, "Oh, this is exciting." Right, or some I can't remember what she said, but it was
no, I'm fucked up here. No, this is fun.
Yeah, she was so excited, and actually, when she said whatever she said, I don't remember exactly what she said, but she was like excited, like, she's like, we got somebody with a problem, like this is great. But it was a beautiful moment because I was a little bit afraid to like say I'm struggling, and then everyone there, it just turned into this amazing like just almost like this circle of like, well, what about this? And let me share this and this. And then Steve like literally handed me a book and was like, you should read this book. It's my copy. It's my third favorite book. When someone says this is my third favorite book, you immediately say, wait, what are your first two? Like what's this, But it was just a beautiful moment. And I think one of the things I learned was it's okay to say I'm struggling.
Right. That's vulnerability. I know I've been taught that you don't admit. I think that's kind of even my dad's generation is, buck up. And I learned to shove my emotions down and to act like everything's okay, which is part of the positivity that a lot of us visionaries have. But to have a place where we can share to say, I'm struggling and I may not even know why. And that people that hug you and love you and say, I've been there, dude, and we're a safe space to hear ourselves, sacred space to hear ourselves think and share. And I think when you brought up an issue, I asked the group, how many other people have dealt with this issue? And I don't think anyone didn't raise their hand.
Everybody raised their hand. I mean, it seemed like every person raised their hand. It was amazing.
And that was a gift you gave to us. And that's counterintuitive how I was brought up. I'm supposed to know it all and the hero, but actually by leading with saying, I'm either confused or frustrated or whatever, or struggling. So thank you for leading us down that path. Awesome.
It was amazing.
All right, so I have one more question before I ask that. Do you have either questions for me or anything else you want to share? Again, this is, about visionaries, for visionaries, and so anything else you want to share or ask me before we conclude?
I would actually love to know, like, what calls you to visionaries? Like, what is it? Like, I mean, I think it's not everyone feels that calling, and I think sometimes people hate visionaries, or have like a frustration, like particularly like integrators, right? Or, they're like, I shouldn't say hate, but just like a frustration, right? So I'm curious, I don't know if I've ever asked you, like, what calls you to that?
Oh, that's a great question. Growing up, I believed in love and magic, and why wouldn't people do what they say and support each other? And then when I saw bullying or a coach didn't follow up on what they said or a parent let us down or whatever, I started to kind of lose faith in God, in humanity, in magic. Okay, so I don't know if it was 7, 8, 9 years old or whatever, kind of said, all right, I guess I'll just play the game and go through it. So you get through school, you go to college, you get drunk, you graduate, and you go get a job. And I was a successful salesperson, and I sold a lot of business, became a sales manager, which as a visionary, I was the top salesperson. So a huge mistake. They made me a visionary manager, which I'm not good at, don't like. And I got farther up is a huge billion-dollar company. And as I got up there, I realized they didn't really have core values. They didn't really have morals. I mean, they literally laughed at me to say, "Yeah, I screwed Schoenfeld to take this job." And I'm like, it's like, are you kidding? So it was kind of a win-lose mentality. So they had a culture. And it was finally when I pretty much achieved everything I thought was success. And I walked into the house that I've always dreamt of, and the business was starting to really kind of rock. I was kind of getting bored, but I looked at the last piece of artwork and the couch that were in my room. I wasn't allowed to sit on the couch because if I spilled, I'd ruin this really expensive Italian couch. And I was kind of like, what the fuck is this all for? And that's when literally, meeting my wife Cheryl and starting to get into spirit and spirituality and just being me and trusting the life and the universe and just what kind of comes through me. And then that's where I got back to the magic and that there's something greater in this world, and realized I didn't fit into the linear world. And again, that's when Gino Wickman, I was his third client at EOS, and he helped me to realize that as a visionary, there's brilliance to it, and there's a need for me, and I fit into business. I'm like, I suck as a business owner. He's like, no, you're a visionary. You just need a process and a great integrator, and that changed my life. And I used to avoid structure like the plague, but I realized if I have structure around things that matter most to me and people that matter most to me, that's amazing. And then there is that creativity, fun, intuition, magic within that structure. So to realize that, and then I realized I'm not the only one who's dealing with this. And so in the EOS community and meeting other people, and it's like, yeah, you're a visionary. And again, we kind of get made fun of, which I used to roll with, but I'm like, you're like Steve Jobs, and he's brilliant, but he was an ass. And we're not all assholes. And so it really tugged at my heart and my soul. And as Cheryl and I are growing and elevating ourselves spiritually, I was like, wow, I want a group of other people like me. And I realized there's a lot of us out there. And even I spoke at the EOS conference a couple of weeks ago, and there were people lined up to talk to me to go, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. And it's like, yeah, man, and we're not any better than anyone else. But to me, again, there's a lot of unknown in the world and a lot of fear. And we're breaking through, or we're hit the ceiling of complexity as a society. And who's going to help us to break through that? Visionaries. And again, we're not better than anyone else. We're just different. And so, and again, it's an and. So it's structure and integrators and amazing people and the magic and creativity of us visionaries. So it's been just, again, I kind of created this group for me. And again, I saw, John, come, you're a visionary, come join. And so I'm a good salesperson. But it was basically saying, you know what, we can change the world. And how do we do that? By just being me. And so I used to think I had to go get millions of people to all go do something or make billions so it's like, no, I can affect your life by elevating my consciousness and being present with you and impactful with you. And it's been so amazing how many people that I've affected and vice versa. So long-winded, it's kind of a life journey, but I never, and in a lot of these interviews, when I talk to people, they're like, I never felt like I fit in. And it's like, yeah, you do fit in with you and your family, just be you, so long-winded, it's
awesome. Yeah, beautiful.
And I used to make fun of Gino's one of my best friends, and I was fortunate to watch him and be a part of, mainly as a friend, him turn his dad's company around. His dad's a visionary. And then he looked around our forum table in EO and he's like, you're a visionary, you're fucked up like me. And then he helped us and he helped me to do that and see that. And it was like, oh, wow, I can be me. It's a great journey. And again, I think it's the greatest time ever to be alive, greatest time to be a visionary. And then not only to help other visionaries, which again, I love, and they're helping me, it's helping our employees and the next generation and our kids, not necessarily to be visionaries, but to have vision. It's like, so what do you want to do when you grow up? It's like, I don't know. Well, if you did know, what would it be? And let's start to even just talk about it. And like you said, even when we fall down, it's like, okay, what did we learn? Do we keep going or not or whatever? And so I just think it's a miraculous time to be alive, and just happy to be here with you, John.
No, I love it. I love it. I would say too, like, I just think about the beautiful thing, and I've been putting this in my updates generally on the text threads, but I'm trying to be the person that I wanted to be as a kid.
Yeah, I love that. Right.
And I just think about that, and it's like, gosh, could you ask for anything cooler
Right.
than that? There's
Yeah.
there's not much cooler than that. You
Yeah.
just really think about, your first dream as a kid, or what you really thought about as a kid. Like, oh, this would be so cool to do
Right.
this.
Right.
And that's what I think you're helping people do, Bob. That's awesome.
Thank you. I'm honored and I love it. And again, it's I'm client number one, by the way. I mean, people. I have one quick story before we wrap. I had a client that I was coaching, and he's like, "You perplex me." I'm like, "Well, what does that mean?" He's like, "Well, you seem to really have your shit together, and you've got a great business. You're happy. You got a great family. And then after I really get in and hear it, it's like you're just fucked up as I am." I'm like, "Yes." And I don't portray myself that I have it all figured out. I mean, I've learned a lot, and I've been working on this and the visionary space and coaching them and being coached. But yeah, whether we're flawed or whatever. And I think the biggest thing is let's have fun. Business can become so sterile and competitive, and you should do this, and it's like, let's have some fun while we're doing it. My brother brought up a thing. He's like, yeah, there's a lot of people in the world who think that we are doomed. He doesn't, but we had this conversation. I'm like,
Yeah.
you know what? I have this incredible belief and faith that we can pull this off. And that's where we can leave this world in even a greater place for our kids and our grandkids than how we found it. And some people are like, well, no, there's so much divisiveness. I'm like, there is. And I can't change the world. I can only change me and be me. And again, as I raise my consciousness and you raise yours, not only when we're together do we help each other, but energetically, we're healing the world by healing ourselves, if that makes sense.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Cool.
I love
All
it.
right. Final question. Our rally cry, the name of the podcast is Viva La Visionary. What does Viva La Visionary mean to you, John?
Wow. Well, I think it's embracing all the stuff that we talked about internally. Like, it's like an internal saying. It's almost like that self-talk that you need sometimes to
Right.
say that I do think that there's a part of all of us where an internal voice that would drag us down.
Yeah.
And you could call it whoever, your book, Unscatter the Chatter, right? It's like you have that chatter. And to me, like, that Viva La Visionary phrase is that the good chatter is a way to kind of cut through a lot of the chatter and to say, like, and here's how I'll phrase it. I've just been saying to myself, John, if you're going to make a decision, just make sure it's authentic to who you are.
Love
And that's how I view Viva La Visionary, is like, wait a second. Are you acting like someone in a cage and you're just trying to make the cage look nice? Or are you venturing outside of the cage, and you might not know what's happening. You might not know when you're going to eat next or when your next big win is going to be, but it's Viva La Visionary. You're being authentic to who you are, and not just who you are, but like the person that you've always wanted to be. So that's what it means to me.
I love it. And it's been so valuable to me. And again, it's not that we're better than others, but it's just, this is who I am. And it's not that I'm you and you're me, but I'm an individual with my own quirkiness, and then embrace that. And you are yours. And we're like, yeah, man, let's have fun and let's make a difference in the world. Let's create great experiences with our kids and our families. That's awesome. Yeah. All right, John, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your friendship. I love you. I'm proud to be in a group with you.
Yeah, thanks. I feel the same, Bob. So I'm very grateful for you, and I'm a huge fan of everything you're doing. So try to evangelize and also support as much as I can.
Well, thank you. And as my lawyer, keep me out of trouble. Okay. All right. All right, John, have a great day.
See you. Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to Viva La Visionary. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and found inspiration in our guest stories. If you loved what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and share the podcast with fellow dreamers and doers. Join us next time as we continue to explore the limitless possibilities of visionary thinking. Until then, keep dreaming big and taking action. Your vision matters.